A present-day Swedish speaker would, with some effort and knowledge about older words and verbal inflections, be able to talk to people from the 16th and 17th century. Whether a person from that time, like for example Gustav Vasa, could do the same with someone from 300 years before him is unlikely. In the transition between old and early modern Swedish, huge changes affected all parts of the language. Vocabulary, grammar and pronunciation led to a shift from a language not far from Old Norse to something closer to modern Swedish. But how far back would a Swede from the 13th century be able to understand his ancestors? Birger Jarl would probably have no trouble speaking to someone in the Viking Age. But what if we went further back, to the Vendel era and the heroic age of legendary kings? Would he understand Hugliek from the 500s? In the centuries leading up to the Viking Age, huge changes affected language in Scandinavia. The transition from Proto to Old Norse was just as dramatic as those between the language of Birger Jarl and modern Swedish. This is 13th century Old Swedish. This is an excerpt from the beginning of the Law Code of Uppland.
Lag skulle vara rättvisum och snällum till sömdar, en vrangum och åsnällum till rätningar. Warin allir rättvisir, tha þurfti ei laga with. Laga yrkir var weger spa, hedin I hednum tima.
Let's ask ourselves, what would this text have been like if it were written in the day of Hugliek, almost 8 centuries earlier?
Lago skulon wesan rechtivisums och snällums till a somethis, anthe vrangums och unsnällums till a rechtingingos. Wasin allers rechtivisis, þannig þurfti ævagin lago vithra. Lago vurkias was wihagaisas spacha, haithinas in haithinums timan.
This is merely a thought experiment, and in practice it is mostly the shape of the words that are reverted. In reality, there ought to have been changes in the grammar too. If the construction with the preposition till and genitive existed in the 500s is unknown, and the word auk was likely only used in the sense of also, with the regular word for and probably being yach like in Gothic. We obviously can't invite Iron Age people as guest lecturers to universities, but thanks to comparative linguistics and intermediate transitional runic inscriptions, we can trace the evolution of the language, which accelerated and peaked around the 500s to 600s. The most striking change is the contraction and shortening of words. Nearly all unstressed vowels were lost, and long vowels shortened. Vowels in the root syllable were influenced by grammatical endings, triggering umlaut. When a y or e sound followed, back vowels fronted, creating y, ä and ö. Word final nasals dropped. Words like thun became thaw, and later on the nasalization was also lost, only surviving today in Upper Dalarna in Sweden. Consonants were also affected. An h after a vowel, pronounced as a velar fricative, disappeared, lengthening the vowel. W fell before rounded vowels, and y completely disappeared at the start of words. Grammatical endings merged and were leveled out through analogy, like how feminine I stems borrowed their genitive ending from the O stems. The outcome was a worn down and contracted language, with many new vowels, a development that also affected early English and German with similar results, fracturing a once homogeneous Germanic language into dialects and eventually languages towards the end of the Iron Age, accelerated by migration-era unrest and unstable climate and starvation. Would a speaker of Old Swedish or Old Norse understand a speaker of proto-norse, that also sometimes is called Northwest Germanic? highly unlikely judging from the radical sound changes. The past was an ever-changing landscape and never a fixed point in time.